Let me ask you something. What would you do if you opened a bill from your homeowners association and the amount you owed had suddenly jumped by almost 40%? Seriously, would you just pay it or would you fight back, totally convinced the law had to be on your side? Well, we're about to dive into a legal battle where the entire thing, thousands of dollars, hinged on the meaning of a single word.
So this is the number that kicked the whole thing off, 39.4%. Homeowners at a place called Mogollon Airpark in Arizona opened their annual HOA bill and found their fees had just skyrocketed by that much in a single year. I mean, imagine getting a bill for your car or your mortgage that jumped that high overnight. It's a real shock to the system.
And to put some real dollars and cents on that percentage, we're talking about a jump from $825 to $1,150. That's a sudden extra $325 that these homeowners were now on the hook for.
Okay, so faced with this massive hike, two homeowners, a guy named Warren Brown and another named Brad Stevens, decided no way. They weren't just going to complain about it, they got organized and they took their HOA to court. Now, Brown and Stevens were absolutely convinced this wasn't just some greedy fee increase. They believed it was flat out illegal. And they had a specific Arizona state law in their back pocket that they thought was their silver bullet, a real open and shut case that would prove them right. At the very heart of this whole fight is this one state law. And when you first look at it, it seems incredibly clear and, you'd think, firmly on the side of the homeowners. And there it is, right there in black and white. The law seems to put this hard cap on how much an HOA can jack up fees year over year. It says you cannot impose a regular assessment that is more than 20% greater than the last one. Seems pretty straightforward, right? So for the homeowners, the whole case looked like simple math. Their fees went up by nearly 40%. The law clearly says 20% is the limit. You can just picture them walking into court feeling pretty confident that the numbers spoke for themselves. Case closed. But, and here's the big twist, the HOA had a defense, and it was a surprisingly good one. Their entire argument didn't rely on some complex math, but on how you interpret a single tiny word in that law. The HOA's argument was really clever. They basically said, whoa, hold on. We didn't impose a 39.4% increase on the regular assessment. Instead, they said, look, we raised the regular assessment by a perfectly legal 14.1%. That extra $209? Oh, that's a special assessment. A totally different category that they argued wasn't covered by that 20% rule at all. And just like that, the entire multi-thousand-dollar case boiled down to one simple-sounding question. What exactly is a regular assessment? Is it just any fee that's voted on through the regular process? Or is it a specific type of fee, totally separate from something called a special assessment? So you end up with these two completely opposing views. The homeowners are arguing that regular just describes the process, a motion, a vote. So any fee passed that way is a regular assessment. But the HOA comes back and says, nope, regular and special are totally different types of fees. It's like comparing apples and oranges. So, with the whole case hanging on this one word, how did the judge rule? Well, the verdict surprised pretty much everyone, and it's a perfect example of just how tricky and nuanced reading the law can be. Okay, here it is. The judge ruled that the massive 39.4% fee increase was completely legal. The HOA won. But, and this is the strange part, the judge also ruled that a separate little $25 late fee the HOA was charging was actually illegal. How in the world does that make any sense? Why was the huge fee okay, but the tiny one was not? To get this verdict, we have to look at the judge's logic. It's fascinating. How could a nearly 40% increase be totally fine, but a $25 fee gets struck down? The answer is all about a legal principle. Not just about how laws are written, but how they are read. This is the key. It's a principle called statutory construction. And it sounds complicated, but the core idea is simple. Every single word in a law is there for a reason. And just as important, if a word is missing from one part of a law, but it shows up in another, that absence is also intentional. It means something. So you can kind of think of the judge as a detective. They weren't just reading the law. They were analyzing it for clues, dusting for fingerprints, trying to figure out what the legislature intended when they wrote it. Every word choice, or even a lack of a word, was a piece of evidence. So here's the clue the judge found. When the law talked about the 20% limit, it specifically used the phrase, a regular assessment.
But in the other part of the law, the clause about late fees just said late payment of assessments. The word regular was missing. The judge concluded this had to be on purpose. The 20% cap only applied to regular fees, but the rules about late fees applied to all of them, regular and special.
And that was it. That was the whole ball game. The presence of the word regular in one sentence and its absence in another decided the entire case. The HOA had basically found a loophole in the wording that let them pass that massive fee increase by just calling part of it something different.
But here's one last, really interesting detail. Throughout this whole case, the homeowners made some very serious accusations that the court actually never ruled on. They were alleging things like deceptive accounting, keeping two different sets of books, and even creating a fabricated shortfall just to have an excuse for the fee hike. Those are some heavy claims that, for now, are just left hanging.
This case is just such a powerful reminder that the documents that govern our lives, from huge state laws down to our simple HOA agreements, are built on very specific words. The difference between assessment and regular assessment was worth thousands of dollars to these homeowners. And it really makes you wonder, right? What single word might be hiding in your own agreements that could change everything?